Hello, everyone. Welcome to Classroom to Zoom, our virtual teaching tools 6-part webinar series. My name is Ignacio Sanchez, and I am the Director of Professional Learning with NEA New Mexico. We are pleased to feature Caitlin McCoy, an outstanding educator and NEA member. She's a library media specialist at Alamogordo High School, and as a Google for Education certified trainer, she speaks often about the possibilities technology opens up for both educators and students. She works with teachers to integrate technology into their classrooms in a meaningful way, such as setting up virtual field trips, facilitating lessons using AR, VR technology, and offering weekly EdTech training and collaborative sessions. She is a passionate educator that hopes that by integrating technology, we can also open up the world of possibilities to our students. Ms. McCoy was instrumental in designing a highly interactive virtual jumpstart 3-day training for national board candidates here in New Mexico. Without any more delay, I present to you Ms. Caitlin McCoy.
Thank you, Ignacio, for that great introduction, and thank you all for being here. So we are going to do this presentation in Nearpod. So if you will, open up a new tab, go to join.nearpod.com, and then the code is in the chat box to join the Nearpod. It's also up here in the top left of my screen. So it's join.nearpod.com. And then you're putting this code up here in the box there, you'll see that. And it looks like, let me move this so I can see it. It looks like we have quite a few people already in the Nearpod. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Remember, the code is in the chat box and it's up here in the top left too. So if you get kicked out, just join us with that same code. So just a quick explanation, that's what I'm going to call it. The goal here is not to kill you with PowerPoint, a PowerPoint presentation. So no death by PowerPoint here. We're using Nearpod because it is an interactive presentation tool. So I think it just makes things a bit more engaging. Also, we're going to show you Nearpod and how to use it with your students. So it just kind of works out as the perfect platform for this. So you have a few different options. And I think the best one is just to stick Zoom in the background and just kind of listen to me and keep Nearpod at the forefront of your screen. If you do need to jump back to Zoom, I will be sure to prompt you to come back so that you can watch my screen. But for the most part, we're just going to stick in Nearpod. Now, if you have two screens, you can use those. If you want to use split screen, you can use that as well. But main thing is really just to have that Nearpod open. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I want to know who you are. Introduce yourself. What do you teach? Where do you teach? This new school year is crazy, right? How are you feeling about it? What has you excited and what has you concerned? You should see this text box on your screen. You can add text here. This little image box will also allow you to search for images. A lot of times I use this with my students. I'll say, okay, share a meme that shows me how you're feeling today. So if a meme is how you're feeling, then, or summarizes how you're feeling, then share that with me too. I think that is definitely how we're all feeling, very anxious. It's a totally different situation, right? So where do you teach? What do you teach? And how are you feeling about this year? And I'm just going to give you 30 more seconds to kind of sum up those feelings. I can tell you that before coming into the classroom, I taught online, and honestly, I never thought that I would have to, that would come back around to me where I was teaching online again. It is totally different than teaching in person, for sure. Definitely different. A little overwhelmed. Definitely stressed, but optimistic. That's great. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. I am so glad you are here, and I'm glad that I get to meet you virtually. Elementary librarian, very cool. I really hope it does get easier. I hope so. Okay, so I want to kind of just talk about what this series is going to cover as a whole, and I'm going to give you some of the objectives. So when you, on this screen here, if you go down to the bottom left corner, you'll see that you can hit the arrow to move to the next slide. You can also just click anywhere and that'll take you to the next slide. So this is just a breakdown of each of our sessions. Today we're going to talk about engagement with Nearpod. So we're just going to cover the basics. I've got some really cool free stuff to give you too before you leave. The other thing that's on this page, you'll see where it says resource page. This is a link. So if you click on that, and I just want to kind of show you what this is briefly. It's going to feel like I'm going really quickly over some of this stuff, and especially in the shorter sessions. So just know that this resource page has full tutorials to help you if you get stuck. So if you walk out of here and you're like, wow, that's really cool, but that was a lot of information. I don't know how to launch Nearpod. That's okay. We've got all of this for you here. So some of these are guides that you read, some are videos, some are webinars. So everything is in here. Okay. So I just want to make sure we know what we're looking at. We clicked on the resource page link here on our, what did I call this? The objectives page. All right, so let's jump into it. So engagement and Nearpod. The goal of this series is to help you translate your already amazing lessons to this virtual environment. So the goal of the series is to say, okay, scrap everything that you have. It's not going to work in the virtual environment because you already know how to teach really well. The goal is just to translate. The other thing that I really want to do is to inspire you to get your students communicating, thinking, and collaborating and creating in these virtual classrooms. So as we translate those lessons that you already have, hopefully your students will be able to get some really great collaborating, thinking, and communication in. And then I do want you to walk away with some ed tech skills, hopefully. Those are the big goals here. So let's see. I want to know, what do you want to get out of each session? Or what do you hope to gain from this experience? And what do you need from me? I know that there is a lot going on and all of the schools are doing things a little bit differently. So tell me, what do you need and what do you hope to gain from this experience? I'm just going to switch to student view so you can only see what I see on my screen. But just take a couple of minutes to reflect on that. What do you hope to gain and what do you need from me, the presenter? So while you're kind of reflecting on that, I just kind of want to talk about what this that you're seeing is. So this is an open-ended question in Nearpod. I use this when maybe I don't want other students to see what their classmates are typing. What's really cool about this too is you can, instead of typing a response, students can record their audio. You probably see that button underneath your text box. So this is a really great way to get the students writing and answering some questions independently. So it looks like that just turned orange. So we have about 50 more seconds and then we will move on. So what do you hope to gain from this experience and what do you need from me? So tools to add variety, engaging students, how to create lessons in Nearpod using what you already have. And that is a really great thing about Nearpod too, is that you don't have to start from scratch. You can use what you already have and just add to it. Awesome. So let's get started into this. So what is Nearpod? I want to start with just a brief introduction of Nearpod. One of the things that I kind of have taken away, we've been in school for a week now, and we're doing Google Meets. And one thing that I've noticed is that it's kind of quiet. Students have their videos off, they're muted, it's hard to get class discussions going. We don't want to say, hey, turn your video on, you've got to have it on, right? Because some students maybe don't want to share their home with us. So it's a totally different environment. And so the question becomes, how do we engage students through a screen when we can't hear them and we can't see them? How do we get to know these students? How do we make sure that they're there and that they're learning with us? And I think that Nearpod really gives us a solution. So Nearpod is a presentation tool that makes teaching interactive. So what you've seen so far, there are slides, just like there would be in a PowerPoint or a Google Slides presentation, but then there are also little interactive activities sprinkled throughout. And so basically you can create lessons within minutes, especially if you already have PowerPoints or Google Slide decks created. You can just upload those and add little interactive elements within it. It collects student data, so everything that you've typed so far, I can go back in and look at later, and I am going to show you that. Anything that's on the web, you can easily bring into your lessons. It enables 100% student engagement, so I can see right away who's participating and who's not participating. You can use Google Slides. This does work with Google Slides. It's got a really neat add-on. And then what's really, really cool about this in the virtual learning environment is that you can deploy it live, like we're doing now, which means I have control of where everyone goes, what slide that they go to, or you can send a link and have them complete it on their own, at their own pace. So that's what makes Nearpod really, really cool. So I want to know now, how familiar are you with Nearpod? And this is just a poll, so I can kind of, and you might use this to gauge your students or to get their ideas. It's just a really quick way to poll your students. So how familiar are you? All right, we've got some saying near what? And I hope by the end of this, you will be able to say, yes, I know Nearpod. We've got some that are pro at Nearpod. That is awesome. And then some that said I've used it here and there. All right, what's cool about this is I can share it to your screen too, so then you can see the results. So most of us are at the near what level, and hopefully you'll walk away of maybe not a pro, but I used it here and there. And then eventually we'll get you to the pro. All right, so the best way to learn Nearpod is to be the learner first. And I'm gonna have this activity or this lesson, and you're gonna be the student, right? And I think that's a really great way to see Nearpod, because you yourself are that student and you get to think like a student. And so hopefully you'll see how fun and engaging this can be. So this is my practice lesson, my sample lesson for you. So this is my we will statement, my objective. So we're going to use Nearpod features to better understand engagement in the virtual environment. And first things first, what does engagement look like in your classroom? So the one with walls, not the one with screens. How do you know your students are engaged? What are the things that you're looking for? Engagement in your classroom. And I think that's something that you can kind of look around your classroom and you go, wow, they are really into this lesson. I think my funniest engagement, I was teaching Emily Dickinson poetry, yes, to my 11th graders. And I had an 11th grade class that was all, it was all like jocks. Like literally every person in that class did some sort of sport. And it's Emily Dickinson poetry, so it's kind of heavy and a lot of emotions going through that poetry. And they got so excited with a Kahoot we did. I looked around and I was like, wow, this is what engagement looks like. So they're looking at me, answering questions, making comments, they're participating in the discussion. Eyes on me for sure, for sure. We're looking for them to be interested in the content, right? We want them to, and if they're doing independent work, that might mean they're really into it, they're researching, they're actively involved. You can see it on their faces and their body language. Yeah, it's just one of those things where you just go, wow, they really look like they're engaged. And so these things that we see in our classroom, you know, we're reading their body languages, their faces, we can see them, eyes are on you, all of this stuff we can't do in the virtual environment as well, right? We can't see that they're making eye contact. We can't see their body language. We can't see their faces. And sometimes communication can be hard in this virtual environment. So these are things that maybe now we're thinking, how do I know that they're engaged, you know? So, right, conversation, it can be verbal. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so this is our classroom. This is the things that we miss, right? No matter how small, how cluttered, how messy, how many cute little mice you find in the corners of your classroom, we miss it now. Maybe, I don't know, maybe everybody does. I know I do. So with this is a 360 image. You can drag around. So if you just click and drag across the screen, you can see up and down and all around. If students have a VR headset, and they make really, really cheap ones that are made out of cardboard, Google Cardboard VR headsets, then they can enter VR here if they're doing it on their phone or iPad, and then it brings them there, right? Which is really cool. And I wanted to put this here because I wanted to show you something that's built into Nearpod. So all of this comes from 360cities.net, and it's all user uploaded content. So if you want to take them to the Library of Congress or the pyramids in Egypt or the rainforest or wherever it is, there really is something for everything. I did a virtual field trip this summer where I took them to Roanoke in North Carolina. And if you've ever been to Roanoke, it is nothing except for mosquitoes. And so to find a video, a 360 image of Roanoke, I was like, wow, that's amazing. So really there is just about anything you can find with this. So this is one really cool thing to bring your students places. Okay, now I think everyone's had a chance to kind of explore that classroom. Okay, I'm going to try to connect this to this lesson. You ready for this? I'm going to say teaching virtually is like a balancing act, right? We're balancing our skills of like how we know to teach in the classroom with our tech skills. Okay, I'm trying to bridge, right, where this to where this makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. I really just want to show you how cool these simulations are. They're all science related. So this one's really cool. You can click on any level. This is a game. Some of them they have are just simulations, so they can play. But this is an actual game where they have to get things right. And so if you just click on level 1, it'll bring you to the first one. You'll see that there are these 5 kilogram bricks that you can move. And so the goal is to balance the beam. And it'll give you a little sad face or a happy face, depending on how well you do. So that was clearly not right. Let me try that again. I'm going to drag my little brick and check. Ooh, oh wait, maybe I should actually look at it. There we go. And it brings you to different challenges. So the next one, if you're in level 1, challenge 2, says what will happen. And so you have to kind of look at these 3 options and pick which one. And these are something else that's built in, and they have a lot of different topics, all within science-based activities. And so this is one way that we can get students maybe interacting with something that we would have them doing in the classroom, like maybe we're building something, we have a hands-on lab, maybe that's not as accessible in the virtual environment, and so we can use these simulations to bring some of that to our virtual classroom. And if you're playing this, you'll see that it's kind of a addicting. I put this on my screen in the library just because it was cool, right? And you would not believe how many students just stood there like playing with it. And the cool thing is, yes, it's a game, but also they're learning something as they're playing. Okay, so hopefully everyone has had a chance to kind of play with this a little bit. We are going to move on to the next theme. I just want to give you a second because I know this can be really fun to play. Okay, the other thing that you can do with Nearpod is embed videos straight from YouTube. And so I'm going to play this video because it's hilarious. So let's see, let me make sure I turn on the computer sound. Okay.
Dear students, there's a right way to join an online classroom, and then there's the wrong way. Take a look. First, you want to sit facing a window or a light. Next, you want to press mute. Then, look directly into the camera. And finally, lean into the screen so that your entire face fills the frame. It seems easy, and it is. Just avoid being one of these students. Harry Houdini, the one who hides and tries to disappear behind his hood. The Steph Curry, the student who wants to interact, but he's so far away from the screen you can barely see him. He's 10 feet behind the three-point line, and he has trouble making his point. Or you've got the dark shadow, the student who you can barely see, and it's really creepy. And the I woke up like this, the student who put no effort in their appearance and they're clearly sleeping through your lesson. The scene of the crime where only certain body parts of the victim, the student, can be seen. And then the silence of the lamb, the student who rambles on and on and on, but is clearly on mute, but has no idea. And then, the Zoomer, the student who takes the word Zoom a little bit too literally. And then we have the halo, the student who sits with the light right behind them, casting a hue of bright light around them. It's very annoying. And then we have the nomad, the student who cannot sit still and roams around the house throughout the entire lesson. And then you've got the groundhog, the one whose head you can barely see. And then we have the headless horseman, whose camera angle is quite unfortunate for obvious reasons. And then we have Galileo, the student who is constantly looking around and daydreaming and clearly not paying attention to anything you're saying. The unmutable madness. There is so much going on in this child's house, and for some reason, he doesn't seem to be able to keep himself on mute.
Can't you clean your room?
And then you have the Decepticon, the student who acts like he's paying attention, but he's really not. He's deceiving you. He's doing everything but paying attention. And the self-obsessed student, only interested in using classroom screen time to primp and to adorn themselves. And finally, we have the rest Zoomer. This is the student who's on Zoom and forgets to press mute when he goes to the restroom.
Stop it. Get to
He needs some milk.
So students, please heed my advice and avoid any of those behaviors. I will thank you. Your teachers will thank you, and your classmates online will appreciate it as well.
Did you clean your room?
Kids, I gotta
go. So I think and I'm going to turn that off. I think that the only one that he's missing is like the ceiling fan student, right? Where all you see is like a spinning ceiling fan. I've had that a couple of times. Okay, so I just wanted to, whoops, I wanted to show you that fun video, but also I really just want to show you that Nearpod, you can add the video into the Nearpod so they don't have to leave. This is a web page. The other thing that's cool about Nearpod is that anything that you can find online, you can embed into Nearpod using web content. So if you find something that you want them to read or some website you want them to explore, you just pull that URL and you can embed that into the Nearpod itself. So if you click on it, we're just going to kind of brush over the list of like ways to engage your students. A lot of these will connect right back into the Nearpod or into Nearpod itself with engaging your students. All right, I'm going to jump to the next slide. So compare and contrast. What are the differences between in-person engagement and virtual engagement? So we know that they look different, right? And what you've got here is a draw it activity, and you've got a Venn diagram. So on your side, you should have some options to add a text box, highlight, draw. You can import some images. And all of those options are at the bottom. If you want to look at my screen to see what those options look like while I talk about them, you can. Otherwise, you can just kind of play with this and complete this assignment. So we've got, you can draw it, right? And this will just let you draw. You can choose your colors. Then I've got the highlighter. And so thinking about these tools, you know, I might add a paragraph for them to read, or maybe a short poem as the background image. And now I'm saying, okay, go through and highlight the symbolism that you see. I might add any type of diagram like this and have them fill it in. So they can add the text box and they can move it where they want it and resize it. So I might add my text box here and say, okay, virtual engagement. And so that's my title. So I can add a text box. I can also insert images. So you can do that one of two ways. You can Google search. Google search is built in. So if I wanted to find an image of a dog, I can do that. But I can also insert images of my own. And so maybe we say, okay, add an image or add 3 images that represent yourself, so that we can kind of get to know each other a little bit better. So maybe they add a picture of their dog, a picture of themselves, a picture of an activity that they enjoy doing. The possibilities with this type of activity are completely endless. Because it's fun, because they get to draw and play around with that kind of thing. But also you can add anything you want into the background that they can draw over. So that's just something that's really cool for the students. And I'm sure as you see, it's fun to play with too, right? You've got plenty of options. I know usually I'll do an activity, you know, they get with a partner, and I'll say, okay, you need to learn a little bit about your partner, find out your partner's favorite food and draw it. And this I do with high schoolers, and they just have such a fun time just drawing, and they get to know their partner a little bit that way too. So that's our draw it activity. So why Nearpod for engagement? As you saw, I put our objective at the beginning, so you can add those slides with text. So I might add my objective, and then at the end, our learning outcomes. The lesson can be shared via a link, and I'm going to show you how you can do that, but you can share it as a student-paced lesson, so then students can click through it and complete it on their own time. And you can do it live, like we're doing it now. What's cool is everything is in one link. So your assignment might be for the day or for the week or whatever it is, one link. So one Nearpod that they go in and complete. The videos there, the writing assignments there, everything they need is within that one lesson. It also allows for discussion. So we're getting to know our students through that discussion, but also students are getting to know each other, which can be a challenge in a virtual environment. So we can do that by incorporating Collaborate boards. We can put Padlet boards in here, and then Flipgrid is another one that's built in. So the other thing that I really, really love, we as people have a relatively short attention span. 10 minutes is kind of that max of our attention span, and that applies, it's even lower when you get to the younger students. But that 10-minute attention span can be kept within a Nearpod, because maybe you have a 10-minute video where they're watching it, or they're reading content for 10 minutes, but then you get to jump and have them do something. So we're refreshing that attention span. So you can add those little interactive elements all throughout it, therefore keeping them engaged the entire time. We can add engaging elements that reinforce learning rather than, they're not just fun, they actually have a purpose and they reinforce that learning. And then you can assess your students frequently, and the data is saved for you to review. So anything, like I said before, that they type in, you can go back and look at that. So that's why we should use Nearpod for engagement. And this is a really cool Nearpod overview. This is one of the slide decks that you can go through yourself. So remember, the bottom left corner, you'll see the arrows to navigate that. You can also click anywhere on the slide and it'll take you to the next slide. So we kind of talked about what Nearpod is already. It's those easily created interactive presentations. Let's see, this is the really cool slide. So slide number 3 has the content and activity types that you can add to a Nearpod. And this list is so huge. I am going to share this. You'll have access to this so that you can review it yourself within that resource guide. It tells you each of these little content circles and then activity circles. If you click on them, it takes you to the Nearpod website to help you implement them and help you understand a little bit better of what they are. So as you can see, there are so many options. Content-wise, you can add videos, anything from the web, slides. You can add vocabulary videos, which are so fun. You've got Nearpod's 3D objects built in. So that's a really cool thing for science, especially. There are a lot of science elements within that. You've got the science simulations, those field trips. That's the classroom that you were brought into, those 360 images. You've got a graphing calculator built in. BBC video is built in. Microsoft Waves are something that you can incorporate really easily. And then you can also add PDFs and audio files. Now the activities, this is really the fun stuff. This is where it gets really cool. You've already done an open-ended question. You've done the draw it and collaborate boards. You've done the poll. And so you can see there are a few other options, and we're going to play with at least a couple more of these. Moving on to the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. And that's live and student pace. So what we're doing right now is live. So I control what slide you're on. As you can see, when I click to move to the next slide, it moves you as well. So that's live. Now the other way to do this is just sharing a link, and that lets students move through it at their own pace. And so that's a really great way to put it into your Google Classroom or your Canvas or whatever it is that you're using. We're going to look at this more in depth, but there are these 2 ways to share a lesson. So live lesson and student paced, and that's on slide 6. Slide 7, and you've already experienced this. To join the live lesson, you get that 5-digit code. You put that in and hit join, and then they're in. And then of course they can add their name too. And then slide 8 talks about student data. So you can review all student work with their reports, which are so cool, and I am going to walk you through that as well. Whoops. Jumped ahead of me a second. There we go. Okay, so we are going to do a matching pairs activity. This is one of those activities that we looked at before. And so you should see on your screen tiles, and if you click on it and then click on the matching one, it'll give you either a red or green, like, yeah, that's right, no, that's wrong, try again. So go ahead and you've got 1:10 to kind of play around with this one. See, it'll give you that green check mark when you get it right, and then take those off. And with this, you can upload images or just add text, or any combination of the two. So you'll see some of them are the images, and then some are text. And so this is a really cool way to kind of gauge what students know during the lesson. So this is a matching activity. Nearpod also has a memory game activity, which is really fun, I think, for lower levels. You can, it's the same. So you upload an image and they have to kind of match those two images. So they're similar, but. All right, 8 more seconds. I do want to show you the teacher view on this side of things. So if you want to jump back to the Zoom to see what I see, this is what you see on the teacher side. So I get a list of the students. I can see how many matches they did, and then how many tries it took to get there. And this kind of data will show up with any activity. You get to see live what the students are doing. So if I were doing this live, I would start to say, Miss Johnston doesn't look like she's participating. So maybe I need to watch her name on the other ones. So that's a way to kind of gauge, are my students all here with me in the lesson? Alrighty. Okay, so jump back into the Zoom. I'm gonna walk you through some of Nearpod. So it's just nearpod.com. And if you don't, I know that my district, we have a district license. If you don't already have an account, I do have a coupon code for you to get 3 months of gold, which is one of the paid subscriptions for free. So if you want to hang back with me at the end of this webinar, I will help you get set up with a new account. Setting up an account with your Google account is the easiest way to do it, because you can create a lesson in Google Slides. So you're back with me in the Zoom, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through Nearpod. When you log in, when you create your account and you log into Nearpod, this is what you'll see. And so there are a few different things to look at. I want to first look at this box here. So you can create a lesson in Nearpod or a lesson in Google Slides. If I choose lesson in Nearpod, and this is one thing that you probably already have. Let's say that you have a PowerPoint presentation and you don't want to start from scratch, because who does want to start from scratch? You can upload that PowerPoint here, and then it'll show each slide in a box, and all you do is then add interaction in between it. So if you already have something created that you use in your classroom, you don't have to start from scratch. You can use that to create a Nearpod lesson. And some of the things that we do, when you have a PowerPoint and maybe you're teaching in front of the class, you stop to get student feedback, whether that be you asking them a question and they hold up a whiteboard, or you starting a group conversation. We do that in our classroom already. Now, instead of maybe a group conversation in person, you're just adding a collaborative board to the lesson. So that's one way that you can not start completely from scratch. Now, going back to Nearpod, the other option was to create a lesson in Google Slides. This is the way that I create my lessons, simply because I am a Google Slides person. I love Google Slides. I know it well, and so it's easiest for me to create a lesson in Google Slides. And Nearpod is an add-on that you add, and if it'll open, a Google Slides presentation. I'll show you what the navigation looks like with that. This loading thing's kind of cool to look at though. Okay, I'll just open up a slide and show you how to do that. But so if you already have a Google slide created, again, all you need to do is add that add-on and add those interactive elements throughout your presentation. Now, the other thing that you'll see here is you can organize your lessons within folders. You'll also see this. This is what I really want to show you. Over here on the side, you've got reports. This is where you're going to see all that student data. So some of them, like, let's say this, let's look at this one. So this was a live lesson, Myths and Legends of the Outer Banks. I can see that each session, so each time you generate a new code, which I usually, when I'm teaching in classes, it's a new code for each class. That way they're separated by classes. I can click on this, and then I get kind of a summary. So Christopher participated 100%. So he did all of the activities in the Nearpod, whereas I can see Sarah participated 75%. So maybe she missed one of those interactive features. But then it'll break it up by each activity. So you can see what their responses were. You can read what they wrote. Collaborative boards are really cool because you can see the whole board when they're doing student pace. So they're doing it on their own with that link. You can also choose to approve or say, no, we're not having that, their responses. So all of that is here. I can also export it as a PDF. If I need to save it or send it to someone, I can do that too. And that saves for every single lesson you do. And you can see I kind of have a list here. So all of that data is accessible to me at any time, which is just a really, really cool thing. Nearpod also has lessons built in. If you don't have a Nearpod account, I am going to give you a $20 off code for the Nearpod library to use here. Their lessons are really, really great. I use a lot of the digital citizenship lessons, and they're just very well put together lessons. So those are pre-made, things that you don't have to do. And then when you want to go launch a lesson, you hover over the lesson you want, and you see those two options that I've kind of mentioned a few times. So that live participation, like what we're doing now, and then the student pace. You also have the option to share with teachers or export as a PDF if you want. So that is the basics of Nearpod. And like I said, if you want to stay on with us at the end of this webinar, I can help you get set up with that with a Nearpod account for sure. So jumping back into the Nearpod now. So you are watching my Zoom screen, but let's go back into the Nearpod. This is, I think it's my favorite activity that Nearpod has to offer. So go ahead and choose your avatar.
Caitlin,
Yes.
we have a question from Stephanie.
Okay.
Can you change that option later?
The option of the underwater, what we're looking at now?
Oh, no, the before. She had asked it before you transitioned to this section. And let me see if I can unmute Stephanie so she can ask that question. Give me a second.
I don't remember what I said just before this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I'm gonna. Okay, Stephanie, you can now speak if you unmute yourself. And if
Oh
you
yeah,
want,
the option of live, the slide being live or self-paced.
So you can't change it during the lesson. You can't start, say, like a live lesson and then say, okay, now I want them to go student paced. You can't do it in the middle
That makes
of a lesson.
But okay, but you can once you do the live, then it becomes a self-paced. You can use it.
Yeah, and you can do both. So let's say maybe
Right.
you do a live lesson with your students in a Google Meet, but you had some that were absent. You can then share that student pace link with them, and then the students will be able to complete the same lesson on their own time.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for asking. So go ahead and choose your avatar on this time decline screen. You should see some little animals that you can choose from. Click on one, and that'll pop you up just like this. So I see a little penguin on my screen. So what's funny is the graphics on this are so cheesy, and they're perfect for younger students, right? Because they're cute little animals. It's an underwater theme. It's got some pretty cheesy music, but you would not believe how excited high schoolers get over this and how competitive they get over this. And if you've ever used, oh gosh, I'm losing it. Kahoot. If you've ever used that, it's very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And this will move on its own. So it gives you a certain time to answer the questions, and then it moves to the next one. And so you earn points by answering quickly and answering correctly. So the first question, true or false, Nearpod can be used for both synchronous and asynchronous learning. I see a lion is moving very quickly up the hill here. Question 2, Nearpod only works with Microsoft PowerPoint, true or false? False, so it also works with Google Slides. How can you share the lessons with students who missed the live class? So we've got two options. We've got the live participation, and then what? All right, so we can share the student paste link with those who missed the live class. Where can you find student responses and participation? How do you know that they're engaged, that they're doing things? So that's student reports. So remember, all of that data, all of the student responses are kept in the student report portion. Question 5, how many different types of activities can you embed in a Nearpod? I don't remember the answer to that, but I'm going to say a lot. All right, so it looks like our penguin, oh, I don't know which penguin, let me see. So I can hide student names, and if you're looking at my screen, then you see I have a button. I can either hide the names or I can show them. So Janella, 1, good job. And you can kind of see how fun that would be for students, right? It really is one of those game type of activities. Okay, so this is a Padlet. So it kind of looks like our collaborative board, but it is a Padlet that's embedded. So Padlet is a collaborative board, but it has more options. So you can respond to each other, which is great about Padlet. So take kind of a second to respond or to reflect. Now that you've experienced online learning from a student's perspective, think about what it tells you about engagement, share your ideas, and then respond to someone else. And so you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a pink plus button. And if you hit that, then it brings up a tile. So I might say, okay, there's mine. And you can see once you have a response up there, you should see an option to add a comment. So I might heart this one and say, Yes, I agree. And so this is one of those ways that we can get students communicating together. We can start to build that online community, right, by getting them talking. And what's cool about Padlet, and we will talk about Padlet in the next session, but Padlet has a lot of different options for how your boards can look. And so usually I'll use the built-in Nearpod collaborate boards when it's not important that they respond to each other. So I will use that just when I want them to share ideas together. But if I want to get them talking to each other, that's when I'm going to turn to something like Padlet because it has a little bit more options built into it. So the activities help to keep student engaged, much better than just a presentation where there's no student engagement, especially in the online environment. All right, so here are some things to take away. These are those coupons. So if you click on those little tags, you'll get your $20 free in the Nearpod lesson library and 3 months of Nearpod Gold for free. If you don't click on these right now, don't worry, they're also on that resource page, and that'll be linked in the final slide that we'll keep open. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, Nearpod is not the only way to make lessons interactive. Pear Deck works very similar to Nearpod. Both Pear Deck and Nearpod have free options, but the type of activities that are allowed, I guess, in the free options are different. And so if you look at Nearpod and you're like, oh, I don't want to pay that much for it, but I don't love the limitations, then maybe look at Pear Deck and see if that will fit your needs better, or use both. I started out a Pear Deck person. I loved it, best thing ever, and then I switched over to Nearpod. So Pear Deck is there if you want to use it instead of Nearpod. This link will take you to a getting started guide with Pear Deck, and that is also linked in our resource page as well. So grab these coupons. If you haven't grabbed them, then they will be in the final slide. But we can take a couple of minutes now for questions, comments, concerns, thoughts.
This is a good example of wait time.
Which can be a little bit awkward in the online environment, right? Because I can't see any of you. So I'm like, wait, are they engaged with the lesson? I'm going to go ahead and switch to this final slide just because there are some links there for you. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to type them in the chat or hang back and you can talk with me too. That's fine. So a couple things on this last slide. Well, more than a couple. If you want to add the series to your calendar so you don't forget, you can click here. Our next session is going to be Thursday at 5. We're going to talk about ways to get them talking. So we're going to look at Jamboard, Padlet, and Flipgrid. Ooh, that is hard to say actually. Jamboard, Padlet, Flipgrid. Oh my. This is the resource guide. Click on that, bookmark it, keep it. It's got all of the tutorials. So if you walk away and you're like, oh, Nearpod's really cool, but I need a little bit more, there are webinars, getting started guides, the coupons are linked there, and all of the other resources that we're going to use throughout the rest of the series are there as well. The other thing, this says share your best practices, that little yellow circle. Our last session is going to be highlighting those best virtual teaching practices. So if you have something really cool that has worked and you're just so excited to share, please share it with us. We want to see the awesome things that you're already doing. And then lastly, you'll see that there's a survey At the end of this series, you are going to receive a certificate of completion. So please complete this survey so that we know who and where to send it to. So 4 things there. You can add it to your calendar. You've got that resource guide. Keep this best practices form. If you have something that really works, please share it with us. We want to know the awesome things you're doing. And then last but not least, please fill out this survey so we can get that certificate of completion at the end of the series for you, and we can know how better to do these webinars for you.
Caitlin,
So
there is
that
a
is
question
okay.
from Patty. So if we are working on a Nearpod in class and you don't finish, they can't do it for homework? Or can
They can do it. They can do it for homework. You would just have to go in and choose the student paste option, which will give you a link that you can share with those students. So if, say, we maybe didn't get to all of this information in this 1-hour session, then what I could do is just give you that link in the chat and you could go and finish that lesson by yourself.
Very good. Thank you, Caitlin, for this very helpful webinar. And I really want to thank everyone for joining us. And as was already mentioned, please join us for session number 2. Caitlin's going to cover, as she said, Jamboard, Padlet, and Flipgrid, facilitating student engagement. And this one is only going to be 30 minutes. So you'll join with the same link that we used today, with the same password. And please encourage others to register. We'll share the recording of this webinar for them to watch before the next session if they like. And also remember, each of you, as was already said, will receive a certificate of participation. I want to just add, this is important because the new teacher evaluation has 50% of that evaluation being your PDP, or your professional development plan. And so this will serve to prove that you're getting professional development. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. Be safe, and good evening to all of you. And if you'll hold on for just a second, that's where I'm going to cut it for the recording, but I'm going to share with you in the chat a link to not a webinar, but a meeting, a Zoom meeting. If you would like to join us, just give us a couple of minutes. Click on that link. There's no password necessary. And we'll just connect again, and this time we'll be able to see you. And it looks like we have another question. Let's see. No, it's just, Serena, you're welcome, and hopefully you can join us. Very good. So good night, everybody. And if you can, I'll leave this on for a little while to make sure that you can click on that Zoom link. If for any reason you have trouble, email me back where in your the email that you received, and I will make sure that you get on. This was just kind of a quick meeting I put together. So good night, everybody, and hope to see you in the Zoom meeting here shortly. Bye.
Thank you for coming.